So, okay. Hey guys, so I know this is an unscheduled live stream, and that is because something has been percolating or brewing for a while here on the Big Island, and it's kind of started to come to a head, and I think that it's important to take this opportunity to, I do want to be really clear as we go forward. This isn't an exercise in shame or shaming. This isn't like a call out. This is an invitation to start a discussion. So you all may or may not know there is a community here that holds an event called the Big Island Fruit Festival. And I've been asked many times, like, am I involved? And do I go? And that answer is no. Generally speaking, I'm not involved. I have not been to many events, and today my friend Katie is here to discuss a little bit about why we, as vegans, high fruit eating vegans here on the Big Island, have had reservations about participating.
Yeah, so one of the big things about events like this is, and really our actions at all as spiritual people or as vegans or as well-intentioned people, is recognizing the difference between what our intentions are and what the impact of our actions are. And that we can be well-intentioned and our impact can still have really grave consequences. So in this situation, this morning I woke up to find a lot of my Kanaka friends, you know, like Native Hawaiian friends, posting about how an event, a hike that was scheduled to go through Waipio Valley was really insensitive. And so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I appreciate that the organizers listened to those grievances and they canceled the event. And so one of the most important things about calling in, right? So one of my really beautiful friends, Kalama, is really intent about we are here to call in and create conversation so that we can actually learn from our mistakes and move forward versus calling out and creating shame or more division or anger. Like, this is really about us holding ourselves to higher standards each and every time we screw up.
Yeah, and I've heard the word drama used several times already. This isn't an attempt to create drama or controversy, and I really want to be so clear that I see this group and the organizers and their intentions are beautiful and valuable, but the level of awareness is an issue.
Yeah. So the hike brought attention to it this morning, but the hike is not the point.
The hike is like
thank you for canceling it. The
Yes.
hike is really like a smaller symptom to the bigger problem, which is colonization. It's settler culture in an illegally occupied land. So for those of you out there who aren't aware, Hawaii has been illegally occupied by the U.S. military and the U.S. state, and has no grounds. There's no grounds for annexation. So in a way that's different from other treaty occupied lands that still should be sovereign lands and not be the frickin' U.S., Hawaii has an extremely valid claim that they are not the U.S., okay? So it's more problematic that people are coming here and they are being taught how to live in these lands or how to visit or come move here, come be here, it's so great, it's so abundant, without being taught that that is not the case. It is deeply traumatizing for people of these lands to constantly be inundated with white faces. Our sheer presence is a re-traumatization of living in an occupied land, and to ignore that is extremely painful, it is extremely ignorant, and in a lot of ways willfully ignorant.
Yeah, this isn't the first year that this event has been taking place. The organizers themselves have lived here for several years, as I have, you know. I moved here, and that is something that
that we sit with a lot.
That we sit with
a lot, and we think, like, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe like, my impact is actually a bigger harm than it is a help. And I know that if you're not thinking those questions, that those are important things that we should be feeling into. So if we are, as settlers, as foreigners, to live in these lands, what are our responsibilities? It's the same thing that we're talking about with men who want to support in the Me Too campaign. If you're not actively trying to tear apart these systems of oppression, then you're complicit in them. And so what we want to step forward is to hold our vegan community, right, to a higher standard, right? Because it's not the emotional labor of Hawaiians to bear to talk about these things. They've been screaming it from the rooftops, in legal battles, in racist institutions, in schools. It's not their job to teach you guys. It's our job, and it sucks. It doesn't feel nice. It doesn't feel nice to feel like you've done something bad in the world, but that feeling, that visceral, yucky, I don't know how I feel, that's what we're being asked to sit with and do something with.
That discomfort, that feeling like you're getting choked on your words, like, I don't know what I can say that's right. That is all part of the process, and that is all so necessary. And we sit here as two white girls not to speak for Hawaiian people. We cannot do that. We sit here as two white girls trying to hold our community accountable for the way that their actions and their attitudes are being interpreted by Native Hawaiian people. And it is uncomfortable both to be part of that community, to be on both sides of seeing how, I want to be part of this vegan community. I see these people as people who I would want to be friends with, people who, a community that I want to be a part of. But at the same point in time, we need to address the way that the interaction between this land and its people, who, the more white people who come here, literally, the less Native Hawaiian people can afford to live here. That is a fact. And that is a fact that we are sitting with, and it is uncomfortable, and it makes me feel sick. And that is something that cannot or should not be bulldozed or railroaded or ignored, because to ignore it is us as white people retracting into our white privilege, because it is our privilege that we can ignore this. Hawaiian people cannot ignore this. They don't have a choice. They're faced with it every single day. And to know that, my presence here, the way that I choose to act here, is can be traumatizing to Hawaiian people.
Yeah, and so I guess Hawaiians as a culture are probably one of the most beautiful, kind, gracious, welcoming people on
Which
earth.
is romanticized about.
Right, yeah.
A lot.
It is. But in truth, they're extremely tolerant and kind in a way that, like, I can't even fathom. And so they're not saying never come, never visit, but as hosts, or not hosts, I'm sorry, totally the wrong word, as guests, okay, whether we are residents here and pay taxes to the U.S., which is not to the Kingdom of Hawaii, we are guests in these lands. And if we're going to be in any kind of position of inviting others to come here, first and foremost, our platform needs to be about the education of what is happening here and what needs doing here, and not over-romanticizing and not over-pulling, telling a bunch of more settlers, come, there's so much space.
There's so much fruit everywhere.
Don't. What comes forward at this stuff is really like the idea of us being able to listen. Okay, as guests in these lands, it is not our job or our right to host people. It is the Kanaka of these lands to be in charge of how that looks or doesn't look. And so, like any other issue, right, whether it's race or it's class or it's gender, we're not asking for a long list of solutions or arguments. A lot of it's just listen, right? And it's not even so much listen to us, it's listen to the people of these lands. And if you don't know, have a format or an avenue to do that, then like that's a big first step, right? We were talking about like, you know, someone was talking about needing permission. Like, how do I get permission to go on this hike? This hike goes through Waipio Valley. They've canceled it again. We appreciate that a lot. But it goes through private property, but also really like sacred lands that are not for visitors. They weren't even for a lot of Kanaka. Historically, they were very like special sacred places. And
when you're asking permission, you know, I don't know who to ask for permission. The fact that you don't know who to ask for permission, or that you think that permission is something that you can ask for, indicates that you are, number one, not involved or affiliated with the communities who are able to give that permission. And that's a question. And two, it illustrates a lack of understanding that permission is not necessarily in Hawaiian culture something that you ask for. It is something that is given to you when you have proven that you are capable of carrying that kuleana, that responsibility of being in such a sacred place. And there has been a little bit of communication about like, oh, well, we're not going to the waterfalls, we're not going to the sacred waterfalls this time. But Hi'ilave, the sacred waterfalls, have been visited by this group many, many times. They have made many videos about it. They have taken videos of themselves skinny dipping there. And that it breaks my heart that those videos were made, that I made comments on those videos that were not addressed, and that the videos are still up about that place. And it's still advertised as, hey, do you want to come here? Come to my retreat next year. And in truth, like this, in the same way that the hike isn't really the issue, the Big Island Fruit Fest isn't actually the specific issue either. The big thing here is that we need to be addressing as groups, as organizations, what does it mean to pull people into lands that you don't have really like the ability to represent. And as vegans, you know, one of the main reasons that most of us are vegan is because we are kind and we are compassionate and we truly and deeply want to see a more peaceful, a more just world. And to limit trauma.
And to limit trauma.
To limit the trauma,
right?
That we do.
And so it is not simply enough to change how you eat and what shoes you wear. You have to, if you're going to be vegan, in my opinion, I can only speak for myself, you have to also be fighting against systemic racism and against class injustice and for Indigenous rights and for water rights. And it is also not our place as vegans to step in and be holier than thou in Indigenous lands and Indigenous settings. Our relationship with food, our relationship with meat and animals is different than people from an Indigenous perspective, and they have a human right to decide for themselves, okay? Again, I can only speak for myself. My veganism is a reaction to the way the world is now. I don't think if I was living in a cultural time pre-colonialism that it would even need to be something we would talk about.
Yeah. Because
some cultures would eat very little animal products, some cultures would eat more, right? And so to be in an occupied land and to even talk about veganism needs to be done with a lens of deep respect, and one that isn't saying that I know best and therefore all of you who live here already need to be doing things the way I do. That's missionary work. That's colonialism, right? So no matter how like colonial the dairy industry is, it's a freaking nightmare. And a lot of these same Kanaka who are not vegans are fighting against the dairy industry on our island. That they're not mutually exclusive. We cannot be the people who want to exclude and push away.
Yeah.
We have to actually practice the inclusiveness and the compassion that we truly want. And can I just do one more thing? I'm on my roll. you know, when we want to think about, I'm a yoga teacher, you know, like I try more than teaching, I try to share and try to like embody those practices of awareness, of effort, of compassion, of self-reflection. And if we are to get to any kind of point that a lot of people want of oneness, of us being all together and interconnected, we first must look at the ways that we've been separated, the painful, oppressive ways that we have been separated.
Because it hasn't been that painful for us, you know,
no.
As two white girls sitting here.
We cannot jump to oneness without doing the hard work. As one of my friends says, racism took thousands of years, brick and mortar, brick by brick to build, and it will take that long to dismantle. So we don't get to skip over the hard work. We have to go to where the oppression lies and be willing, one, to step back, listen. What are we being asked to do? And step two, hold people within our community as accountable and really focus on calling in, on creating greater conversations and moving forward rather than calling out, you're wrong, and therefore I'm shutting down. It's not helpful.
And I know that pretty soon after you made your post on the Big Island Fruit Fest board, there was a response video made. I think that was Ryan. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with faces and names, but one of the organizers made a video. And I appreciate that he put in the effort, though I do question the immediacy that that video was put out. Was to me an illustration that he did not necessarily take the invitation to sit with those uncomfortable feelings that he was feeling, right? So in the video you see he's very uncomfortable. It's palpable, and I feel for him because that is the discomfort that I feel in my heart when I sit with these questions too. And something that has been important for me in being able to deal with that discomfort is learning that when I am uncomfortable, it is not necessarily my place to speak about it and to speak as if I know or as if I have surety about something when I am deeply unsure and I am deeply confused about the topic that I am speaking of. And I am so uncomfortable that I'm able to get my words out correctly, especially when I'm talking to, with, or about something relating to people of color, Native Hawaiians, things that I have not personally lived through, traumas that I have spent most of my life unaware of, and the ways in which I have been perpetuating those traumas unknowingly, or with willful, purposeful ignorance because it was too hard to look at.
For every minute or hour that we feel squirmy and uncomfortable and sick by having to confront this stuff, it's lifetimes and generations of not just feeling squirmy and wormy and uncomfortable, but of feeling unsafe, of being targets of violence and genocide. It is well worth our time to sit with that pain and that discomfort than for other people to have to actually experience a lifetime of that kind of pain and discomfort. And it's not their job to have to constantly speak up.
Or coach you through your feelings.
Or tell you how to be a good ally. Yeah. There are so many good resources. There, you know, if you're following a channel on YouTube, you already know how to look stuff up, right? You know, I spoke with someone recently. She's like, "Well, I just don't know. I don't have the time to da da da." It's like, if you have the time to be posting on Facebook, you have the time to read articles on allyship. You have the time to read articles on Native sovereignty, on issues like this, and it's not people of color or Indigenous people's job to go and educate you. We're hoping that we can spark some conversation and take a little bit of that emotional load.
It's called free emotional labor. And as a white person who is at least semi-aware, who is trying to be more aware, it's my kuleana, my responsibility to be uncomfortable and speak up and perhaps get people within this community upset with me because I have done so. It is my job to be misinterpreted and misunderstood and have to re-explain and re-defend my position and answer the questions and be present in the comments. That is a responsibility that has laid with people of color for, I don't know, generations? Forever.
Yeah,
and so as an ally, allyship is about shouldering that burden a little bit and helping to minimize the trauma that those people have to go through from doing this free emotional labor constantly. So we're at 20 minutes.
That's a good and long. If you've hung on long enough. I told her we should only do 10 because people don't have good attention spans, but you guys do.
Yeah. So thank you if you have watched this video, if you've sat through it. My hope is that it makes you feel really uncomfortable and that it makes you reflect on your actions and your attitudes and how those can be interpreted by other people who do not share your narrow perception of reality. I invite everyone to sit with that, defending yourself or your position, speaking about necessarily your experience of racism as a white person is, I invite you to reflect on that without participating necessarily in those activities.
Yeah, and we will be around in the exhausting comments section because it's intended to be a beginning of a conversation rather than us shutting down either.
Yeah, and my intention, you know, for people from the Big Island Fruit Festival who are watching this, organizers too, my intention, I've gone to a couple events over the last few days, and I am encouraged by the questions that are being asked and the direction that things are going and the awareness that is blossoming. My intention is to still be involved in that, even though it's uncomfortable for me and probably for everyone there. And my hope is that we can grow as a community cohesively, because if this issue is not addressed, it is going to generate conflict. I don't want to be a part of that, but I will, because it's my kuleana. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think just to reiterate that, you know, the post talks about Big Island Fruit Fest, and the Big Island Fruit Fest is an issue, but that this is a much wider issue, and it's not just an issue in Hawaii. Yeah. It's an issue in the vegan community at large, and how we interact with people of color, and how we interact with Indigenous populations, and also just how we think about who we are. To remember that at the core, most of us came to this path out of compassion and empathy, and that if we're truly to embody compassion and empathy moving forward, that we have to broaden our scope every single day. And, you know, yoga to me is a science, and the scientific method is to observe, to test, and to retest. And a good scientist is never trying to prove themselves right. A good scientist is trying to prove themselves wrong. So you're excluding. It means entering into the world with discernment and saying, I would like to be proven wrong so that I can grow and be a better person because of it. Neither of us are perfect. Neither of us came to Hawaii and knew what we were doing, right? You know, but we've learned along the way. And
we're sitting with the uncomfortable questions that our presence here brings up.
And does it mean that we will be here forever? Maybe not, right? But if I am going to be here, I want to be of service to the population here and take some of that burden and responsibility for the yoga community, of which I'm a part of, and of the vegan community, which admittedly I'm not really part of any vegan communities in Hawaii because for a lot of reasons that are stated in this video. Yeah. But I don't want us to get a bad name either.
Yeah. Okay.
So with love.
Yeah.
Truly, you know, we're angry too. You know, anger's real. Anger's a really useful tool, but our goal is to move forward and to see each generation of people a little bit more honest, a little bit more aware, and a little bit more willing to listen to those who have generationally been silenced.
Who have lived through what we can only have projections of. Who, you know, they have lived this.
Okay, that's
yeah.
it. We did it. It's 25.
Okay, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Comments go down below. Anything outright aggressive is going to be deleted, but I trust you guys to be civil. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.